In episode 13, with the tournament back on, everybody gets around in Johnny and Carmen's place and they watch a sort of pre-game show for the Saikai Taikai. There's previews of the fights, there's interviews with Johnny, more so an interview with Daniel, and there's also an interview with Terry Silver. One of the people that's also watching this interview as she trains is Tori. She's doing so alone, though, in her apartment, and she gets a knock at the door, and it's John Kreese. It really does seem like the death of Quan has had an effect on John, because he's shown up to apologize to Tori for letting her down, for using her back in Barcelona. He tells her the only reason he agreed to go back in the tournament was so that she could be champion. But he's not going to be in her corner. He's got one last thing to do, and then he rides off into the sunset. The next day is the kickoff to the Saikai Taikai. As Johnny is grabbing some things from the car, Kreese shows up. It's as if he's going through the 12 steps, and he's reached the make amends part, because he's come to Johnny to basically do the same thing he did with Tori and apologize for failing him. He tells Johnny that he really is sorry for ruining Cobra Kai for him. He was really proud of Johnny for bringing it back. After having some time to reflect, he's realized that he's made a lot of mistakes, and the biggest was probably Johnny. If he didn't push him so hard, and if he wasn't an ass, Johnny could have been in the Saikai Taikai. And he feels really bad about it. But Johnny's kind of heard this before. He thinks it's a trap. He's not going to buy into Kreese's BS. He just tells him, I'm going to go watch my son in the tournament. While the head of the Saikai Taikai is introducing the teams, Terry Silver is getting ready to go out and see his team perform. But he's having difficulty. His sickness is back and in a big way. He's quickly dying. And before he goes, he wants revenge. He wants revenge on Johnny, revenge on Daniel, revenge on Kreese. And in order to get that revenge, the Iron Dragons are going to have to win the tournament, which they should honestly be able to do. They're pretty high up on points. Another thing in their favor is the fact that Cobra Kai only has one participant. Now, the male situation, that is set. It's going to be Robbie versus Axel. The girls' side, however, that's going to be different. After Kreese's little pep talk, Tori decided, you know what, I will fight in the tournament. And she's going to face Sam. The winner of that will go on to face Zara. That day's tournament is going to kick off with the boys, Axel versus Robbie. With no male representative for Cobra Kai, this really is the championship for the boys division. Both fighters get pep talks before they go out on the mat. Robbie's pep talk is a little more, go get him, you got this, while Axel's pep talk that he gets is a little more intense. And it doesn't get better for Axel when Robbie lands a point on him. Now granted, Axel is still up 5-1, but Robbie's the first competitor to actually do this. There's a timeout called, and once again, Robbie gets an inspirational pep talk, Axel gets chewed out. While there's still a 5-point difference between the two, Robbie landed a lot more points this time, including a really nice spin kick right to Axel's face. But Axel is still up 11-6. There's another break in the action, and now Robbie's confidence is flowing. Johnny reminds him, dude, that guy is human. You can win this. Go after him. Axel, however, gets a completely different message. When they go out there for round 3, Axel takes Robbie out. It's a dirty move. It rips up Robbie's knee, and he is down, in pain, and likely out for the entire tournament. Now, while it was a dirty maneuver, the judge decides, you know what, I think they just got tangled up. I don't think it was intentional. But he's going to give Robbie 15 minutes to see if he can continue. And if he can't, Axel's going to be named the boys' champion. This is devastating for Robbie. He's got both Daniel and Johnny and Chosen trying to figure out maybe they can get him back in this thing. And even Tori comes over and says, hey, that guy cheated. I'm going to murder that guy. But Robbie says, just worry about winning your fight. With just Robbie and Johnny alone in the dressing room, Robbie gets pretty emotional. He tells Johnny, I actually could have won this thing. Johnny tells him, you're taking this way better than I would have. And Robbie says, I guess I'm just going to focus on the things that I won and not the things that I lost. Robbie and Johnny share a hug, but Robbie's going to be out of the tournament. The head of the Saikai Taikai announces that Axel is going to advance, and if Cobra Kai doesn't show up with a male to fight him, he's going to end up being champion. That win would all but clinch the Saikai Taikai for the Iron Dragons because of their ginormous lead already. Fighters on Miyagi-Do are realizing this. They're coming to the realization that the tournament is basically out of hand for them. Even if they scored points until the end of it, they wouldn't be enough to catch up. Even that night when Sam is training, she tells Daniel, even if I win tomorrow, it's not going to matter. And isn't that the whole point of this thing? I mean, if I'm not fighting for Miyagi-Do, then what am I fighting for? Before, it seemed like the answer was clear, but now she has to fight Tori, and Tori's got way more riding on this than she does. It just seems like Sam's head is out of the game. Daniel sits down next to her and admits, I'm sorry, but I don't have the answers. I thought that I would get closure from this tournament finishing, but I haven't yet. And Daniel has had a really tough time since they came back from Barcelona. That's known. But that night, he gets a little bit of closure. With everybody sleeping, he's outside in the garden, thinking back on his time with Mr. Miyagi, when all of a sudden the ghosts of his past show up. I'm talking guys in skeleton suits that are going after him. He's having to defend himself. But then the ghost of Mr. Miyagi shows up, and both Daniel and Mr. Miyagi fight them off. He gets really emotional and he yells at Mr. Miyagi, why didn't you tell me that you fought in the Saikai Taikai? Why didn't you tell me that you killed somebody? Why did you leave me with no answers? I've been fighting this whole time, trying to figure out what you would do. But it's not enough. We can't win. And Mr. Miyagi says, Daniel, the answer has been in the same place it's always been. And he puts his hand on his heart. He then tells him, Miyagi-Do teaches win or lose. You don't need to fight anymore. And then Daniel wakes up and realizes it was all a dream. When he gets downstairs that morning, Sam is up, unusually early. She's up that early because she couldn't sleep, and that's because she has a big decision to make. She's decided she's not going to fight. She was really worried that Daniel would be disappointed, but after that dream he had with Mr. Miyagi, he tells her, Sam, I'm not disappointed. He tells her that when he was training with Mr. Miyagi, he thought it was to fight. But he's now realized that he was training with Mr. Miyagi so that he didn't have to fight. This is a giant relief for Sam, but when they arrive at that day's events, Johnny's pissed off. He feels like the LaRussos are just quitting. He tries to explain himself to Johnny about how now he realizes he doesn't have to fight, but Johnny's the exact opposite. He doesn't know how not to fight. And winning the Saikai Taikai was his last shot. As he looks over his shoulder, though, he sees John Kreese leaving the arena, and he goes after him. He says, what was that yesterday? What, you expect me to forgive you? And Kreese tells him, no, I don't deserve forgiveness. Kreese turns around to leave, but Johnny says, I loved you, man. I idolized you. Everything about myself, the good stuff, the confidence, it came from karate and it came from you. So yeah, that night in the parking lot back in 1984 was the single worst night of my life. But what hurt even worse than you choking me out was you abandoning me. You threw me away like I was trash. And as he continues to talk, Johnny's getting more and more emotional. He's on the verge of tears. He unloads all of this trauma that he's had right on a Kreese. And Kreese takes it. And then he gives Johnny a hug. At this point, even Kreese is crying. And he tells Johnny, I can't change the past. Trust me, I wish there was some way I could. I wish there was some way I could make it up to you. And Johnny says, maybe there is. We find out what that is later on when the head of the Saikai Taikai is announcing the end of the semifinals. Axel continuing to go on, and Sam bowing out. Theoretically, this just clinched it for the Iron Dragons, but it didn't. Because Johnny's grand idea is to take over Cobra Kai. Miguel will be fighting Axel in the finals. He will be the male representative. Johnny will be the sensei. Tori will get to fight Zara, and the Iron Dragon's victory celebration is postponed.
Thank you so much for checking out this recap. Please consider subscribing to the channel and subscribing to my Patreon. Hit thumbs up if you liked it. Smash that thumbs down button if you thought it sucked. If you left a comment, I don't get back to you. I usually don't check the comments unless they're like a super comment. Also, if you don't see the next video up on the end screen, not to worry. It'll be up in a day or two.